I've been a priest for 54 years, so I'm already arriving towards the end of my life. You know, my age is now, I was born in 46, so I am 78. I went to the seminary in my home diocese in Rennes, and at the end of the seminary, my bishop asked me if I would accept to join the service of the Holy Father, the Pope, the Vatican, the Holy See. And so I resisted a little bit because, you know, I wanted to be a diocesan priest in my home diocese. But, you know, when you are called by the Pope, when called by the Lord, you cannot say no. So I worked. I finished some studies in Paris. I finished the degree of, you know, the Master in Theology in the Institut Catholique de Paris. And then I worked for 4 years in a parish in the suburb of Paris in the diocese of Nanterre. I was 4 years in Colombes, you know, it's a suburb kind of environment not far from Paris. And at the end of this time, I went to Rome. So I studied for 4 years in Rome. We have a diplomatic school of the Vatican, where the future diplomats of the Church, which I am, by the way, I studied there for 4 years. I finished my doctorate in canon law, and then I was sent in '77 to my first assignment. So I've been since '77 till now. I've been assigned in 9 countries. My first country was New Zealand, so it's not very far from Australia. So that's where I visited Australia. Yeah. And then after 4 years, I was sent in Africa, in Mozambique and Zimbabwe. I remained 6 years there. Then 3 years in Cuba, 2 years in Brazil, and I worked also 4 years in the United Nations in Geneva, you know, with the representation of the Holy Father to the United Nations, which has been also a very interesting experience, you know, because then you follow the life of the world, you know, at a political level, at the level of the culture, ideas. Then in '95, I was appointed, I became an archbishop. I was appointed as a nuncio, and I went to Haiti. I was in Haiti for 4 years as nuncio. Then I was shifted to Uganda, where I remained for 8 years, and then Mexico, and I remained 9 years in Mexico. And I have been nearly 9 years in the United States of America. So, you know, this is my life story. So it has been a long life of traveling. By the way, you know, when I was 3 years old, you know, my father decided to emigrate in Madagascar. My father was a lawyer, but, you know, it's a long story, so he decided to take the family. We were already 3 children, two brothers and myself, my mother, and we went to Madagascar. So I grew up in Madagascar until the age of 10. Then we came back and I went to Saint-Malo. So that's the life story. So you asked me how I've been introduced into the story of the Catholic Action and so forth. So my mother was born in Rennes, and whenever she was a young woman, you know, before getting married, maybe she was 17, 18, she got involved in the foundation of what we call a GIC. And this is, of course, as you know, because this is very well known, this is related, of course, to the story of Cardin and Jacques, you know. So, you know, when the young priest Cardin, you know, was confronted, this is his personal story, you know, with the problem of young the young workers, and the exploitation they had, the difficulty they had, the lack of education, and so forth, the conditions of work. So he began to help them, and to help them to examine their life, their in the light of their faith. I think because Catholic action is basically, and I think this is something important to remember, because in my opinion, this is a big challenge we are confronted today. Also, it's how to live your life, your daily life, and to be coherent with your own faith. This is what Cardin did. And the story of Cardin, I don't need to explain it to you because you know it better than myself. So that was the beginning of La Joque. It's interesting because Catholic action existed before Cardin, by the way. But the interesting aspect, and this is what personally I've always been fascinated with, is that Cardin had the intuition, and in my opinion, it's very important, powerful intuitions, that to go deep into, you cannot evangelize a person if you are not, considering the whole of the person, particularly the culture of the person, the background of the person, the life of the person. We cannot evangelize in a superficial way. And the best way is really to help the person to realize who he is or who she is, And this is what Cardin did, particularly applying this method, if you like, to the young Christian workers. And he opened a new way of Catholic action, which is a specialized Catholic action. It's not just a kind of generic way of evangelizing, you go in a church and you speak to anybody, because each person is different. Each person has different background. Each person has, as we say in French, a different milieu, kind of sociological milieu, a different culture, a different origin. And you cannot speak the same language to a middle-class person and to young workers at a particular time and so forth. You really need to enter in a kind of deep personal relationship so that the people may realize that the calling of Christ applies to me, but in whom I am. I think it's important. And this is what Cardin discovered. So, at the same time, there was other people, and I will tell you how I met them later. But there was a lady she was called Marie-Louise Monet. You know that the Jean Monnet was the founder of Europe. The idea of Europe began with big people, very important people like Jean Monnet, Robert Schuman, and so forth. Those who had the first idea. And these people were basically had the Christian origin there. So Marie-Louise Monet was the sister of Jean Monnet. And she was, accompanying her brother, in the works of, already in Brussels, in the foundations of Europe. And she realized that, they had contact with a lot of people who are not of working class origin, by the way. They were, as we say in French, more of middle class, or in English, middle class, or la bourgeoisie, And I am personally, my parents are from the little bourgeoisie in Rennes, So I had long conversations later in my life, with Marie-Louise Monet, and she said, "What could we know? How could we apply the same method of Cardin, but in a different milieu, so that the language of Jesus Christ could also apply to people in their different culture?" And she started, the same kind of movement, same approach. And the approach, as you know, the method is basically to look at the reality, to evaluate the reality, and to act, to draw the consequence. And this is the method of evangelization, always in the light, of course, of the gospel. And it's interesting, maybe we could discuss about that. But you know what the Holy Father wants to do now during the synod is basically the same thing. Because, you know, we look, the reality is more important than the idea. So we must adhere to the reality, but always evaluate the reality. The evaluation is what we call the discernment, and but always under the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit who is present in the life of the person, but also through which who is present in a community. So we could, you know, we are not far. That's my feeling, you know. The Catholic Action method is not far from what the Holy Father wants the synod people and ourselves, the church today, in a different context to apply. So Marie-Louise Monet started a movement which was going in parallel with the Catholic Action for workers, you know. In English, we said Young Christian Workers. In French, les Jeunesse ouvrière chrétienne. But there was also a movement for adults, you know, l'Action catholique ouvrière. I don't know how to say it in English. So this movement began, and with a number of persons, you know, from all corners of France, they started this movement. And my mother, I don't know how she managed to get it, but, you know, she was very quite devoted Catholic and, you know, quite active, quite a personality, by the way. She has great qualities of leadership. And she got involved, you know, and she started the foundation of JIC, Jeunesse Indépendante Chrétienne. They call them independent, you know, as opposed to the workers. Yeah, that's a word, you know. And she started that in the area of Brittany. That's how, you know, I grew up, you know, because in my family, my father and my mother was different, but they were all committed Catholic. my father had been a scout, and he founded, you know, a group scout in the big parish in Rennes. My father was very much involved at the level of Brittany. So they had already, you know, they were may I say, the typical lay people of Vatican II. You know, I would never see my father or my mother, you know, being extraordinary minister of the communion. That was not their thing, you know. They used to, you know, all their life, they were practicing Catholic. I saw my father and my mother going to Mass every day until they die, you know. So that was part, you know, the people of deep faith, but very committed, you know, in their jobs, you know, the faith and work, faith and family, faith and social relationship, faith, you know, so that our faith is lived in our life. And this is what personally I learned when I grew up through the witness of my parents. Not that, you know, they were, you know, always talking about that, you know, it was visible in the house, in the family, in the relationship we had, in the conflict we have to resolve, because in my family we had a lot of conflict, as all families, you know, all the disputes, the breakdown, and so forth. But yeah, when we went to Madagascar, one brother and two sisters were born in Madagascar, so at the end we were 6 children. Now, you know, when I was made a cardinal last year, 45 members of my family, you know, the descendants of my father and mother, came to accompany me, and there was 25 grandnephews and nieces, you know, so the family has grown up. And it's interesting, by the way, you know how the problem of our time today is that it's difficulty to to transmit the faith and the traditions. I'm sure that you yourself, in your families, you find that it's not easy. It is not easy in my family either, and I experienced that. But, I saw that as we were together for a few days, in Rome last year, precisely at that time, I saw that, you see the fruits of, the roots which were, the seeds were planted by my parents, precisely, a faith which still is part of life, today, you see many people who are just see the faith as in a very formal way, but I think in my family I've seen that something which is deeper, precisely, which comes from a kind of a long and deep education of the faith, which has been one of the fruits of precisely of Catholic Action. So, interesting enough, when I was sent to Rome, to study by my bishop, and so my father, that was in years later, when I was already a priest, and my mother said, you are going to Rome. So, certainly you will see in Rome Marie-Louise Monet. I said, who is Marie-Louise? And Monsieur and Madame Galichon, So, indeed, when I arrived in Rome, I contacted them. They were living in Rome, and they had founded the international, as you know, MIAMSI, which is the international movement of Catholic Action in the middle class and the bourgeois independent. And so they were living in Rome, feeding this movement at the international level, So I at the end of their life, because Marie-Louise Monet was already an old lady, but, I had hours and hours of friendship and conversations where they explained to me, the long story of Catholic Action, which is very interesting, And of course, another detail which is interesting, Marie-Louise Monet was the first woman appointed by the Pope Paul VI as observer to the Council Vatican II. So it's a long story, It's a long story which is very, in my opinion, very interesting. And I think I congratulate you, by the way, to keep this memory, because this is not just a memory, It is a continuity. It's a part of the history of the Church. And this, even if some people think that Catholic Action is not at the order of the day, it's not true, because there is a continuity, and it's very important to discover where you can see this continuity, because especially in the world of today, which is changing very fast, and in the secularized world where God is being separated, from our reality, and sometimes we forget, about who we are, about the presence of the Lord in our life, and as somebody said, we quite often live as if God did not exist, or we don't. We have lost, the relationship between the two, and which is very serious. So this is maybe I will also tell you something which is I have experienced when I was appointed from Uganda after 8 years in Uganda to Mexico. I had already worked in South America for many years. I was in Brazil, I had been in Haiti, I had been in Cuba, and so forth. So I knew the context of South America, especially the context of the attention to the poor, liberation theology, and so forth. But then after 8 years in Africa, you are plunged in the different culture and different context. And when you come back, you say, oh my God, things have changed, even in 8 years, because the time is flying. So I arrived in 2007 to Mexico. And when I was received as a nuncio, I was a representative of the Pope in Mexico by the bishops, a few bishops at the airport. There was one of them in particular. He's now the Cardinal Archbishop of Mexico City, Carlos Aguirre Retes. And he was explaining me that, they were just arriving the day before from Brazil, Aparecida. They had participated to the meeting of the fifth Assembly of South American Bishop, in Aparecida in May 2007. And he was telling me how extraordinary this meeting had been. Quite a big experience. Where Aparecida, it's a great sanctuary of Our Lady. The Brazilian people are very devotees, to Our Lady of Aparecida. So that's where, the bishops of South America had their fifth meeting. It's interesting because the the South American bishops, this continent has been the only one which has organized a kind of a synodal approach in order to implement, the intuitions, the ideas, of Vatican II. So you had 5 big conferences. Each conference was, organized by CELAM and also the CAL, the Commission for South America of the Vatican. And, it helped the South American bishops to examine the situations of their continent, particularly the situation of poverty, the culture, and so forth, and to make a kind of research, discernment at the level of the continent, so that they may discover where to go, how to evangelize the people today. So they give birth to the liberation theology and so forth. So when I was precisely in the airport waiting for the documents to be prepared, this Archbishop, who is now Cardinal, explained to me how extraordinary had been, this meeting. And this meeting happened in 2007. It means 18 years after the end of, the collapse of the Berlin Wall, which, introduced a great change of culture in South America, And for 18 years, the church was a bit lost, what to do, how to do. So finally, the bishops decided to meet, And when they arrived, all these meetings, they had already prepared, the various groups had already prepared a lot of documents, and papers, and they said, no, we are living in a new epoch, as they say. So we need to, as pastors, as shepherds, not as technicians, not as, bureaucrats and so forth, but as pastors concerned by the transmission of the faith to our people, to examine what's going on. And they just started from scratch. It was very interesting, So they rejected all the documents which had been prepared because it was a kind of ideological battle, Some groups said, well, we have to save the liberation theology, we have to save blah, blah, blah. And they said, no, look at the reality, in a humble way. It is very courageous in a way because, we all want to save our ideas. And the problem is not fighting for ideas, it's looking at the reality as it is. This is the synodal approach, by the way. It's interesting. But also, this is an approach which is influenced by the method of Catholic action. And they said the main difficulty we have as pastors, and is that the transmission of the faith in a new context. It's very interesting. The world has changed, and we have to. Now we realize that particularly the fathers, the mothers, the families, they all suffer. they have goodwill, but they cannot transmit the faith to their children. They fail, most of them. You know, the teachers, they don't know what to teach. It seems that there is a new context, a new world being, and the priests, they are lost. Maybe this is one of the reasons why we have so few vocations, because, you know, many young people say, what should I do as a priest, you know? And they say, no, we don't know. You know, in the past, it was easy to be a priest. It was relatively easy to be a father and a mother because you knew what to do. No, we don't know what to. And many priests are lost. And may I say also the politicians. You know, the politicians today, they fall so easily in the ideology. Why? Because they have lost the idea that a politician is serving the community in order to help a community to survive, a country to survive. You know, this is the context we are living in, and that's the bishop said. So what should we do? And the document, you know, when I arrived, after, as I told you, 8 years in Africa, which is, you know, the context in Africa is different. You know, I read the final documents which had just been written of Aparecida, and I was amazed by the beauty of this document, you know, because I saw the efforts of bishops from all South America trying to say, how should we evangelize in a new context? How evangelize in a new context? How to help the families, our priests, our teachers, our politicians, our workers, you know, to have a personal encounter with Christ in the new context. And the document is that. Okay. Now, and I will finish with that. I apologize to be so long. But, you know, Cardinal Aguiar told me, you know, there was somebody, you know, who helping us during our research, you know, to make this discernment, and this man was called Bergoglio. I don't know if you heard about Bergoglio, no? So, you know, he was the Archbishop of, you know, Buenos Aires, and he was going around and helping the people to make this discernment. It was a very simple operation, but this attentions, this method, you know, gave the document of Aparecida. Well, 6 years later, that was 2007, 2013, this Bergoglio was elected Pope. You know, interesting, as you know that. So, and the first document of this Pope is Evangelii Gaudium, the joy of the gospel. And the joy of the gospel is precisely a copy of Aparecida, of the document of Aparecida. So when I arrived myself in 2007 in Mexico, I saw in the church the power of the document of Aparecida and the Evangelii to transform the local church of Mexico, you know. And I saw the fruits of that. Precisely, many bishops began to, you know, to apply this kind of synodal method, and you know, to make pastoral visits, to develop pastoral plans, to examine the reality as it is, to examine the challenge and to give a new answer, you know, not to repeat the same things, you know, not to find solutions which have not worked, but to do that with their people at all levels, the parishes, the communities, the dioceses, and so forth. I don't say that was perfect everywhere, but, you know, I saw that during my 9 years in Mexico, how the fruits of such an attitude. So, yeah, I think for me it has been a wonderful experience. It's interesting, by the way, when 9 years later I was sent to United States, and that was, and I spoke about that, you know, of my experience. But it's interesting to see that in many even bishops, you know, had never heard really about Aparecida and the connection between Aparecida and Evangelii Gaudium. Evangelii Gaudium had been for many people a kind of one more document, but it was not, by the way. It was the fruit of an experience. It was the fruit of a synodal experience. So, I've seen that now, I've seen that in my life, it's so important for us. And I congratulate you precisely in what you do, to see the connections between things and the continuity of the life of the church, but also not to be just nostalgic people. I've seen also in my life, when I was worked in a parish for 4 years in a suburb of Paris, you had also a lot of sectarian people. They were just defending an idea. Saying, I'm for Catholic action. And that's the only solution. No. We really need the life of the church is a continuity. We should, and it's a succession of experience, and we need, especially we the shepherds, the bishops, the priests, the laity involved, in evangelizations. You need to have a lot of wisdom in order to take benefit of the experience of the church, which is wonderful, but also to be very attentive to the needs of the time. So, what is your reaction? I'm sorry, I don't hear you. Hello?
Hello.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Bonjour pour vous, monsieur le cardinal Christopher. Je suis uruguayenne et française.
Oui.
Et je fais mon expérience à la GEC depuis l'université et après à l'équipe internationale. Et nous sommes en ce moment avec un défi énorme parce que même si je bien compris vos paroles, et vous avez exprimé comment la validité de notre méthodologie, devoir juger et agir, et qui est reprise avec les synodes. Mais notre défi, c'est voir comment on renouvelle notre capacité de relire la réalité et d'emmener l'évangile aux étudiants, aux ouvriers, aux indépendants bourgeois, mais en même temps, on se pose question, pour ce que vous venez de nous faire comprendre, avec une très bonne qualité d'expression pour nous, c'est qu'est-ce que vous avez vu dans votre longue expérience de tous ces mouvements, comment vous les voyez, si vous voyez un futur pour ces mouvements, et comment vous les placez à l'intérieur de l'Église. Merci.
Oui, est-ce que peut-être qu'il y a une ou deux personnes qui veulent s'exprimer davantage ou je réponds?
Oui, c'est ça.
Monsieur le cardinal, je vais poursuivre en français. Jocelyne Minerve de l'île Maurice.
Ah oui.
You sent me back down memory lane avec Madame Marie-Louise Monet. J'étais toute jeune quand elle est venue à Maurice pour relancer la CI, l'Action catholique en milieu indépendant, qui est devenue Foi et Vie aujourd'hui. Oui. Juste en passant pour dire qu'il y a eu une expérience extraordinaire à partir Moi, je viens du MIDAD, de l'ACE. J'ai été secrétaire général de l'ACE à Paris il y a longtemps. Et il y a eu une expérience de collaboration intermilieu extraordinaire à partir d'une expression d'un enfant qui a dit à sa maman, mais comment se fait-il qu'aujourd'hui, dimanche, la cuisinière travaille toute la journée jusqu'à minuit? La maman a reçu comme une gifle. Elle a apporté cette réflexion d'enfant dans son équipe d'ACI et ils ont dialogué avec un aumônier normand de la JOC à l'époque, un spiritain, le père Albert Perrier. Et il y a eu toute une action durant 2 ans pour une action collective transformatrice, comme nous disons dans notre jargon, et qui a débouché sur un dialogue avec le ministère et les autorités publiques et sur une législation pour les employés de maison, et les domestiques, jardiniers, etc. Une chose. Donc, ce que je vais dire par là, à un certain moment donné, j'ai été à la coordination de la commission diocésaine du monde ouvrier. Et donc, cette dimension de l'Église, peuple de Dieu en marche, donc tous les milieux concernés, mais aussi toutes les générations intergénérationnelles. Mais je pense que la difficulté et en même temps la chance du mouvement de la CE, c'est que les enfants nous apportent une fraîcheur dans leur manière spontanée de réagir et où nous pouvons relire plus facilement les traces de l'action de l'esprit dans l'entre-eux des enfants. Et ensuite, ça pousse les adultes, les accompagnateurs, accompagnatrices jeunes et adultes, à faire leur propre révision de vie. Donc c'est un mouvement assez difficile où il faut en même temps accompagner les enfants et renvoyer les responsables, les accompagnateurs, à leur propre révision de vie. Donc, alors, dans quelle mesure aujourd'hui cette dimension de l'Église, peuple de Dieu en marche, ici et maintenant, est encore présente et avec toute son acuité, Et d'autre part, j'entends dire que donc, vous avez été beaucoup dans le monde onusien. Et je peux vous dire que moi aussi, j'ai été à quelque temps dans la vie publique, au Parlement, etc. Je suis assez sceptique, pardonnez-moi de parler simplement, franchement, sur l'opérationnalité de tous ces organismes, de ce que fut la Société des Nations. Alors, comment, face à tous ces gros défis d'aujourd'hui, comment est-ce que la présence de l'Église au cœur de ces instances onusiennes peut justement être effective pour apporter une réponse aux grandes questions, que ce soit de guerre, de corruption, tous ces gros défis que nous vivons actuellement. Je vais m'arrêter là pour ne pas être plus longue dans mon intervention. Merci, monsieur. Merci, monsieur le cardinal.
Oui, non, mais attendez, allez-y. Hein. Non, je partage tout à fait votre lecture, mais si vous voulez, il y a d'abord une chose qui, à mon avis, ce que vous avez dit sur les enfants est très important. Quand j'étais à Colombes, justement, j'étais un peu... Le curé de la paroisse m'avait demandé d'être un peu... de suivre un peu toutes les petites communautés d'ACO. J'avais des centaines de communautés dont j'étais un peu l'aumônier, et d'ACE, de l'Action catholique des enfants, précisément. Donc, ce qui montre une chose, si vous voulez, c'est que cette méthode, c'est pas une méthode rigide, si vous voulez. L'évangélisation, elle ne doit jamais être rigide. L'Action catholique, quelquefois, a péché par une certaine rigidité, si vous voulez. Quelquefois, on pense qu'il n'y a qu'un seul chemin. En fait, l'Action catholique, c'est un lieu d'éducation des personnes pour leur permettre justement de regarder la réalité avec un regard de foi. Donc il y a les deux aspects, leur vie quotidienne et puis la foi et le regard de foi, pour que justement éviter que, comme il arrive dans beaucoup de circonstances et dans nos vies, qu'il y ait une séparation entre les deux, si vous voulez. Alors, je crois que les enfants, à mon avis, la CE, c'est une méthode extraordinaire d'éducation des enfants en leur permettant toujours de regarder leur vie c'est-à-dire d'exposer leur vie, de la regarder avec amour, mais toujours sous le regard de la foi. Et pour ça, ils ont besoin d'être accompagnés, quoi. Mais ça aussi, ça s'applique, si vous voulez, aux adolescents, ça s'applique, comme vous l'avez dit, ça s'applique à tous les milieux. Et chaque milieu social, chaque personne même a une manière différente de réagir. Le problème, c'est qu'il faut être ensemble de temps en temps. Donc, on ne s'isole pas. Et l'Action catholique, justement, ça doit toujours être un lieu de rencontre, un lieu de tolérance, un lieu d'écoute. Et en cela, moi, je pense que ce que le pape nous propose est précisément c'est la même chose, si vous voulez, avec un langage différent, mais je suis quand même frappé de voir comment le langage du pape, c'est vraiment le regard sur la réalité. Vous connaissez dans le document Evangelii Gaudium, les fameux 4 grands principes du pape, si vous voulez. Hein. La réalité est plus importante que l'idée. Or, aujourd'hui, et je le vois encore dans ce pays, même aux États-Unis, si vous voulez, les chrétiens souvent se réfugient dans des idées qui deviennent des idéologies. Et ces idées, on se bat pour des idées, et bien sûr, ceux qui ne sont pas d'accord avec nous deviennent nos ennemis. Donc, souvent, on polarise la société. Or, l'Action catholique, justement, c'est un lieu où, quand on se retrouve en petit groupe de personnes et qu'on est sous le regard de Dieu et à l'écoute des uns des autres, eh bien, on va au-delà de la polarisation et des idées pour regarder la réalité telle qu'elle est. Vous voyez, par exemple, l'exemple que vous avez donné est très beau. Si vous voulez, la réalité, c'était qu'il y avait des gens qui travaillaient toute la journée pendant que nous, on se... et on a regardé... Aussi, à mon avis, sur la présence dans toutes les instances internationales, notamment les États-Unis, je partage votre scepticisme, mais on ne peut pas seulement vivre avec scepticisme, il faut regarder la réalité dans sa complexité. Or, aujourd'hui, on a besoin de construire un monde plus juste, donc il faut quand même se lancer dans la bataille. Je pense qu'il y a une vocation de politicien, il y a une vocation de diplomate. Et par exemple, Marie-Louise Monet, c'est là qu'elle a découvert sa vocation, parce qu'elle était la secrétaire d'un grand diplomate qui était son frère, si vous voulez. Et c'est là qu'elle a dit, ben oui, il faut aussi écouter ces gens-là, parce qu'ils ont un rôle à jouer. Et c'est là qu'elle a fondé l'Action catholique des milieux indépendants. Donc c'est très intéressant. Hein?
Sí, quizás ahora un poquito de español. Esta es una comunidad. Y quisiéramos volver a la pregunta que le hicieron, o sea, el futuro. Es decir, nosotros, y voy a ser muy directa, sabemos todo lo que ha sido nuestra historia, sabemos todo lo que hemos dado a la Iglesia, pero en este momento nos sentimos un poco perdidos. Sí, claro. Porque, por ejemplo, antes en los seminarios se les hablaba a los sacerdotes de la Acción Católica. Era la gran estrategia pastoral. Hoy ya no tenemos esa experiencia, hoy ya no somos esa gran estrategia. Y ahí es donde yo creo que estamos buscando, y para eso es esta reunión, para buscar este nuevo camino, es decir, hacia dónde con esta fuerza, como usted nos reconoce que tienen esta experiencia, cómo podemos ir hacia adelante. Y cómo nos enfocamos en el proceso sinodal.
Bueno, eso. Bueno, es su responsabilidad, señor. Hay algo muy importante, es que usted está sensibilizada a esto. Porque hay muchas personas, y yo comparto también lo que usted dice, hasta sacerdotes. A mí me preocupa mucho la formación de los seminaristas, ¿no? Lo que se llama un cierto clericalismo. Es decir, que hay muchos jóvenes sacerdotes que entra en el seminario para limitarse a una función cultural, ¿no? Pero que han perdido un poco el sentido precisamente de acercarse a la gente como están. Yo pienso que el esfuerzo del Papa Francisco es esto. Yo conozco bastante bien el Papa Francisco y él me lo dijo muchas veces. Es que la insiste. Aquí yo me encuentro con personas muchas veces que dicen, basta de sinodalidad. ¿Por qué? Porque no lo entienden y no lo quieren entender. ¿Eh? Y como antes se decía, basta de la acción católica, porque no le entienden. Entonces yo pienso que hay que hacer todo un esfuerzo para poder precisamente encontrar caminos, para poder inventar algo nuevo. Yo no digo que hay que repetir la experiencia de la JIC, la JOC y la JEC. Bueno, hay cosas que ya pasaron, la historia es así, no se trata de ser nostálgico. Yo no soy nostálgico, pero la experiencia que nosotros con la Acción Católica hemos tenido es precisamente esta capacidad de ver la realidad, de analizarla y de salir al encuentro de las personas para poder hacer un camino nuevo. Lo que dice el Papa, eso es evangelizar. Bueno, el Papa lo dice mucho. Una iglesia que no es misionera, que va al encuentro de las personas donde están, pero hay que reconocer que los jóvenes por allá de hoy son totalmente secularizados. Los jóvenes sus informaciones no vienen de sus papás, no vienen del catecismo, nunca oyeron hablar de Jesucristo. Entonces, hay que salir de nuevo, hay que reinventar. El documento de Aparecida es precisamente esto. Necesitamos de crear comunidades donde será posible hacer un primer encuentro con Jesucristo. Hace unas semanas me invitaron a Roma para hablar con 300 nuevos obispos que fueron escogidos este año, ¿no? Y precisamente yo le diré eso, ¿no? Que el mundo de hoy es totalmente, no hay esta experiencia de una evangelización ya hecha que hay solamente que transmitir de una generación a otra. La prioridad es el anuncio, o lo llamamos el querigma. Entonces, hay que anunciar que Jesucristo te ama y que te permitir a través de la comunidad cristiana hacer una experiencia de la presencia de Jesús en tu vida. Y si tú no has encontrado a Cristo, claro que no va a pasar nada. Pero es difícil. Yo comparto esto. Lo he vivido toda mi vida.
Thank you very much. I think we're nearly towards an hour now, so probably we've got a last question in English.
Okay, thank you, Your Eminence. My question is very quick one. Does Church believe that our presence is important for the evangelization, Church as a whole? For example, in our case in Malaysia, I can mention the Bishop Conference and some bishops, they literally told us we don't need action movements, Catholic action movements. So instead of Catholic action movement, they choose for some prayer groups like local prayer groups. So is Church as a whole believe that our contribution is important? If so, even we can see now in the synod, we don't see the representation from our lay movement, from the Action Catholic. So, Cardinal, what is your position and how could you advise us?
Well, yes, I'm sorry. You want to? Yeah, okay. I think it's true. But, even a prayer group, you know, sometimes even a prayer group can also, for example, you know, what is a prayer group? You know? If a prayer group is, for example, there is a method of prayer today which is spread quite a lot. It's la Lectio Divina, you know. But Lectio Divina is also a method where there is not just reciting prayers, but we are, you know, Lectio Divina is also a moment of contemplation of our daily life, you know, under the influence of the Holy Spirit. We listen to each other. You know, a prayer group can become a group of, not necessarily of a Catholic Action as it used to be before, but it could also be go in that direction. So my recommendation is that, you know, we work with the material we have. You know, we are not just fighting for something which we don't have, but, you know, we try to be present wherever you are, you know, become a leader yourself. And if your bishop says, have a group of prayer, have a group of prayer. But a group of prayer can be also a group of conversion. A group of prayer can also become a group of Catholic Action. Why not, you know? Because only when you are a small group and people discover the power of the presence of Christ in my life, so that it transforms you. And through prayer you can, you know. So, of course, you will tell me, you know, I always find a solution. But that's, you know, if we are animated by the Spirit, I think we need a new creativity today. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is the microphone?
So just gave the introduction, so I think we're in the middle of that discussion. And I just wanted to thank you also for your very honest words, like telling us here also that Catholic Action movements have sinned, because thinking that there was some belief that our way is the only one, of course it's a sin, no? And thank you for telling us, and I think it helps us in our auto-reflection. But I also think that there must be some awareness that Catholic Action movements are not the only ones who have been doing that sin in this big community, which is our church. There have been several groups and several people, and I don't need to. But I was just wondering also, because of course I think we all agree. Of course, the groups, which is prayer groups and all these different groups, they can become Catholic Action too, as you just said. But for that, it must be clear that Catholic Action still has a value, and it's not replaced by some groups which are actually not focusing on reality anymore. And you have been talking so much that we need to take the reality into account, and we need actually, as Christians, we need to transform it in the Christian perspective. And I was just wondering if we all agree that this is actually the mission that we have.
Well, yes.
Last question.
If we still have, okay.
Roy, last one, Roy. Last.
Thank you, merci. Donc, je m'appelle Roy, je suis le coordinateur de la GEC internationale. Donc, au-delà juste de cette approche ou de l'aspect aussi personnel de l'évangélisation, je pense que là, on est tous d'accord que on ne fait pas la compétition sur qui va en fait accueillir plus de fidèles. Mais là, je parle dans un point de vue aussi stratégique. Les mouvements catholiques internationaux sont très peu nombreux au sein des institutions internationales. Par exemple, à Genève, à New York, à Paris, à l'UNESCO, on ne forme que 1% peut-être des voix. Et je pense là que l'Église et le Saint-Siège, il a intérêt aussi à soutenir ces mouvements pour qu'on puisse ensemble plaidoyer et, hausser la voix des valeurs et de l'éthique catholique ou de la foi chrétienne plutôt. Donc là, je pense que les intérêts se croisent. Et je pense que, par exemple, nous de la GEC, et je pense aussi de la famille, aussi des autres mouvements, qu'on attend un support, on attend un soutien pour qu'on puisse agir mieux. Et on le voit pas, et on le sent pas, et on se sent aussi seul dans ces instances internationales. Donc pouvez-vous juste m'éclairer un peu si je suis fautif, ou il faut adapter ou changer notre façon de faire ou d'évangéliser? Donc je ne sais pas. Mais merci pour votre patience.
Non. Ajoutez.
Would you like to say a few concluding words, Cardinal Pierre?
Yes. Well, I just, in order to answer to the judge, de la GEC internationale, je me souviens quand j'ai travaillé 4 ans à Genève, et il y avait quand même, si vous voulez, il y avait une présence de différents mouvements. Je ne sais pas comment ça c'est aujourd'hui, mais moi j'encourage ça, bien sûr. J'encourage ça, si vous voulez. Plus on est présent, mieux c'est. Même si, comme disait la dame tout à l'heure, quelquefois on a du mal à y croire. Parce que c'est un monde tellement complexe, et puis il y a beaucoup de blablabla, beaucoup de discours. Mais ça, c'est le monde d'aujourd'hui, si vous voulez. On peut pas éviter, on peut pas rejeter. L'Action catholique nous a aussi appris une chose, c'est à aimer le monde, si vous voulez. Non pas le rejeter. Il ne s'agit pas de dire, bon, ça sert à rien. La présence des chrétiens dans le monde d'aujourd'hui, même si elle est quelquefois insignifiante, elle est très importante, si vous voulez. Alors, et aux Nations Unies, je pense, moi j'ai travaillé 4 ans là, et j'ai vu quand même le rôle bon, quelquefois on ne nous écoute pas, si vous voulez, parce que c'est un monde, il y a des milliers de personnes qui ont leurs propres intérêts, c'est une grande bataille, c'est la guerre. Mais voilà, donc il faut pas perdre de vue, il faut pas se décourager, certainement pas.
Thank you very much, Cardinal Pierre. I think that's a great final comment, that our role is to love the world.